Persona 3 doesn't need a remake. Hold your collective gasps. I can explain. There's been a lot of talk lately about Atlus remaking Persona 3. It feels like every month we get new fake rumors about it. When they made the HD models of the cast for Dancing in Moonlight, everyone lost their minds like a remake was just around the corner. 2.5 years later and all those fools looking pretty stupid. I guess I'm just trying to understand what the hell everyone's on about. Why does everyone want them to remake this game so badly? Well, actually, I do get it, at least on the surface. I think there's a lot of frustration that there's no definitive version of Persona 3 like there is with P4 and Golden and P5 and Royal. Instead, there's two versions with different feature sets, and much like my pathetic attempts to corral all of my Twitter mutuals into my Discord server, we just want everything in one place. I'm sure I don't need to fucking explain this shit, everyone already knows, but in case you don't, or you're a weirdo that just likes hearing me talk, here's a primer. Persona 3 FES for the PS2 was technically the definitive release of its day, and 13 years later, we're still trying to figure out what the fuck it stands for. It rebalanced some shit, fixed some bugs, gave us a playable epilogue campaign called The Answer. It's overall the complete experience. And then you have P3P, or Persona 3 Pussy Edition on the Not Vita, a stripped-down port that removes the overworld exploration for visual novel conversations and drop-down menus and chucks The Answer in the bin, but in exchange offers the option to play as a girl and date boys, and more importantly, full party control all of the later games. A lot of people seem to like the female protagonist route. Personally, I couldn't give less of a shit, as it offers a reasonably different experience that changes how characters interact with you and how you interact with them. And a lot of people seem perpetually annoyed that Atlus has never done it again in any subsequent game or subsequent re-release of said subsequent games. Here's the thing. What a lot of people don't seem to get about P3P was that it was clearly Atlus's attempt to branch out into the otome market, that is to say the fujoshi market, that is to say portable visual novels where you can date hot men. It's a pretty lucrative scene if you could hack it, and while P3P was successful, it clearly didn't do as well with the intended market as they wanted. So if you want to blame anyone for your continued inability to ride Yosuke's dick, blame women! Adding the option to play as a girl in games as long and complicated as Persona is a pretty fucking massive undertaking, and last I checked, Atlus doesn't exactly have fuck you Valve money to blow, but more on that later. So when people say they want to remake a Persona 3, I think what they really want is just to have a definitive version of the game that isn't split features, which is fair, but my argument is that Atlus doesn't really need to remake the bloody thing to do that. In the time since I got the idea to make this video like 5 months ago, Atlus announced SMT3 Nocturne HD, which, thanks guys, really helps prove my next point. They could totally spruce up Persona 3 FES visually and add in the features from P3P with minimal effort, or at the very least minimal compared to remaking the entire fucking game. I will admit that P3 should be made more accessible. Currently the most modern ways to play it is either grab P3P on a Vita or play FES as a PS2 Classic on a PS3. I think at the very least they could make the PS2 Classic version compatible with PS4. That would go a long way in terms of accessibility. I'm sorry, but I just think rebuilding the entire game from scratch in P5's engine is just way overboard for what needs to be done to make the game feature complete and accessible. Everyone just lost their shit at Persona 4 Golden coming to PC, and all they did there was upres some textures, so I mean, fuck it man, nobody cares about graphics. Atlus does need to get better at preserving their catalog and making their old titles accessible to modern audiences. That much is clear, but remaking Persona 3 would be such an enormous waste of their time, money, and creative energies, which would be much better spent making new stuff. I mean, seriously, do you guys want another 9-year gap between installments? This is the part where I speculate about Persona 6. So it's no secret that Persona 5 was kinda like getting Little Caesars. Yeah, it's pizza, and yeah, it's fine, but like, come on, man. I briefly mentioned in a previous video how I believe the elongated development of Persona 5 made the team commit to flawed core ideas via sheer sunk cost fallacy. A lot of its biggest core issues were things Royal couldn't do anything about, and at this point, I'm fine with that. P5 is what it is, a great game despite some glaring flaws. But I know they can do better with a fresh start. So I'm gonna get all the obvious shit out of the way and just throw all the shit pretty much everyone wants up on the screen. So let's talk about what I want them to either do better or do different. First of all, green. Green's a good color. We gotta expand out of the primary colors now, so I think green is the most logical choice for the UI. Green is a very soothing color, very easy on the eyes. Maybe that could be evocative of, I don't know, something. Okay, so getting serious, since I foreshadowed it earlier, I want to talk about playing as a girl for a second. Here's the thing, I don't think the option to play as a female means anything outside of the context of Persona 3.
Let me explain.
In Persona 3, your male party members don't have social links. Why? I don't know. I guess when they were trying to incorporate dating sim elements, they got a little too literal with it. So much so that you couldn't even finish a girl's social link without romancing them, which, that's a whole other thing we'll get to, but... So in P3P, when playing as a girl, they flipped the script. Suddenly your female party members aren't available to hang out with, but the guys were. And this was like the main thing that made the experience different and worth doing. Like there's other minor shit that changes, but this was the main draw. But in 4 and 5, they rectified this by letting you hang out with your bros and end female links platonically, so playing as a girl now wouldn't really change much aside from who you could romance, and, Okay, I'm gonna be honest for a second here. Romance in Persona games kinda sucks. Nuclear take, I know, but look, I'm not saying there isn't some catharsis to be found in getting intimate with your waifu, okay? But the way romancing on the whole works in these games is just kinda whatever. Like, it's just so self-contained, it doesn't affect much of anything outside of the completely optional scenes you can trigger. The process is the same no matter who you're dating. The events play out mostly the same way with just slightly different dialogue, and it's like, it just feels kinda weird and mechanical, which is not how I envision romance. And here's the thing, I don't know how they could fix this without putting just way too much work into overhauling this entire aspect of the game, and frankly, I don't think it would be worth the effort to do so. It's not that I hate that romancing is here, I do get some enjoyment out of it, and clearly other people get a lot more out of it than me, but it's always just kinda been a whatever feature. Real talk, if Persona 6 just flat out removed romancing social links, I would not care. I mean, they won't, obviously, but I'm just saying I personally wouldn't really care all that much. But the bigger point here is that it's such a small part of the overall experience. Persona 5 Royal took me like 140 hours to finish doing all confidants. And you know how much time I spent dating someone? Like maybe an hour and a half? If I was a man whore, it would have taken longer, obviously, but then I'd have to sit through 10 different variations of every romantic scene, and that's hardly worthwhile content to me, considering they're like at least 70% identical conversations. If the only significant difference between playing as a dude or dudette is exactly who you go through this process with, I don't know that that's really worth the effort of adding this feature. Unless they go the extra mile to make it a significantly different experience, it's kinda like, whatever. And by make a significantly different experience, I mean altering a significant number of interactions and providing alternate social links beyond just your ability to romance dudes. My point is that I don't think people liked the female protagonist of P3P just because she was female. They liked it because it provided a fresh experience, because it added things the vanilla game didn't have, but that's going to be difficult to replicate going forward. Speaking more generally, while the social link system itself is a great base to start from, I would like to see the optional hangouts and whatnot expanded upon. Going places with friends, calling your friends at various points, having them reach out to you, etc. I was actually really excited for the text messaging in P5 because I thought that would open the door for a lot of casual conversation with your party members and other confidants, but it's sorely underutilized. It's really only used for two things: random stock requests to hang out and a group chat where everyone incessantly recaps the plot every 2 days. Which, by the way, knock that shit off. It's like they started getting self-conscious about how long the game was, so they added these constant recaps. But what they didn't seem to realize is that adding all of these recaps was part of why the game kept getting longer. Most of the group chat conversations are just the same information regurgitated ad nauseum throughout a story arc. You could cut the number of these in half and it would still feel repetitive. Anyway, I'd like to see them make more extensive use of the phone. Just add more one-on-one and group text conversations that aren't just explaining the plot. That would be pretty immersive and cool. I'll also take this moment to say that I really want more inter-party dynamics again. Part of why the investigation team was so beloved is because nearly everyone had some kind of dynamic with everyone else, which really added to the feeling this was a group of friends. It was believable and enjoyable. P5 didn't really do that, even in Royal, and to an extent I get it, they wanted the vibe to be different. They wanted the Phantom Thieves to feel more like cohorts than an inseparable, tight-knit friend group, but I think they went a little too far with it. It's just distracting how little chemistry everyone has with each other outside of their relationship with Joker and, like, maybe a few select pairs. Let's not forget that part of the premise of the Persona subseries has been the relationships and bonds between people, and I'd like to go back to seeing more of that beyond what my character can create. These are long-ass games. You have so much time to build rapport between party members, and I would like to see them do that better next time. And I guess that brings me pretty cleanly to my next point. If there's one radical change I would like to see Persona 6 adopt, it's that I'm getting a little tired of the gradual building of the party. Characters like Haru suffered a lot from just being introduced so late into the experience. But moreover, one of my big problems with Persona 5 was how compartmentalized character development was. Like, not always, but every party member just kinda takes their turn being in the spotlight. They have their little arc, and then they just kinda remain stagnant throughout the rest of the game. Like, there's exceptions, Morgana probably being the biggest since his social link is mandatory and woven into story events, but in general, your friends in P5 didn't get a lot of character focus outside of their introductory arcs, and this gave the game a very formulaic and choppy flow to it. You might say P4 did the same thing, but it really didn't. You see, the thing about Persona 4 is that the assembling of the team happens way quicker. Risei's dungeon happens in June, and after that you have the entire party minus Naoto, who admittedly doesn't formally join until late October, even later than Haru, but the key difference is that Naoto had been a recurring character in the story since May. In Persona 5, it's very compartmentalized and spread further out, which is weird because you get your party members in P5 partway through a dungeon rather than after one like in P4, and yet it still feels so much slower. You get Yusuke towards the end of May, Makoto towards the end of June, or maybe the beginning of July, I forget. And remember, by this point in P4, you already have everyone except Naoto, who had already been introduced and developed. Futaba doesn't join until early September, Haru in mid-October. Remember, vanilla P5 ends effectively on Christmas, and if we're under the presumption the player is meant to see Akechi as a genuine ally, he doesn't join until fucking November. Akechi is a whole other thing worth his own video, so I'll digress. I'm not saying we should have access to the entire party from the start. I understand why you wouldn't want to do that from a gameplay and story pacing perspective, but I feel like it could happen a lot quicker, and even if characters don't join right away, they should still be introduced and play some role in the narrative prior. That's something I would like to see in Persona 6. As for gameplay changes, pretty much all of my complaints with vanilla P5 were addressed in Royal, so I think they're on the right track. The one thing I'll say is that I wish we could have actually difficult difficulty options. Merciless is not harder than hard, and I need Atlus to acknowledge that fact. It's a cool alternate way to play the game, but triple damage on crit makes the game easier than hard mode if you know what you're doing. Enemies do it too, but that doesn't really make the game harder, it just changes how you approach things. I'm not asking for nocturne levels of ball busting, but I think a little more difficulty would be appreciated. Royal giving you bonuses for practically everything made the experience feel a little too streamlined. But if we're talking about difficulty, here's a fresh idea. Can we get like an actual New Game Plus? It exists, yeah, but it mostly just carries stuff over. I'm talking about a New Game Plus enhanced difficulty mode that actually redesigns the game. It always sucks that by the time you have a full party, tons of persona options, fused into your ultimate personas, unlocked everyone's second or third tier personas, the game's kinda over and you have little to nothing to use those things on. Wouldn't it be really cool if there was a New Game Plus option specifically tailored for max level play, where you can use all of your party members in battle from the start and the challenge is tailored to a nearly maxed out character with endgame personas? Wouldn't that be insane and add a lot of value to the game? I know some people would be like, but that would break immersion, but I'm sorry, have you seen the outfits they're selling you as DLC? And what's wrong with adding a little gaminess? It's New Game Plus, let's go fucking wild! Plus, Atlus, if you're watching this, think about it. Giving us the option to use our party members throughout the entire game in a New Game Plus run is really gonna make all those DLC costumes more appealing, just saying. There's no way in hell I was gonna pay 15 bones to get an alternate costume pack for Sumire, but if I could have used her throughout an entire New Game Plus run, things might have been different. Just saying, that's a free idea on the house. I know you guys like money, and I think you're missing a prime opportunity to make some more of it. The last thing I'll touch on is the format of the adventure. Early in P5's development, they were actually planning on having the party travel the globe and visit all sorts of different places. Persona World Tour, if you will. But after the 2011 Tohoku earthquake, they ultimately decided to keep the series at home. Some people have gotten really attached to them revisiting this idea, so I wanted to give my thoughts on it. I think it could work and be really cool, but they'd have to be really smart about it. For one, you'd be trading one of the series' biggest strengths, the ability to flesh out a singular setting, for the novelty of traveling the world. That's a lot of work to flesh out every location enough that it doesn't feel like a cheap theme park ride. And I'm somewhat concerned with how it would work with social links that aren't party members. I'm not sure if they want to put most of the social links in the game on a time limit that you have to complete before moving on to your next destination, or you miss them entirely. I mean, I could see that being cool and different in some ways, but I don't know how well that would go over, especially if progression is still going to have social stat gates. It could be really frustrating. On the other hand, I think traveling the world with your friends has the potential for the best cast exploration yet by putting them in many different scenarios. A Persona game without a status quo to return to is admittedly an exciting prospect if they do it right. I can envision an amazing game that utilizes this premise, but I can also see it being a cheap, frustrating experience if they don't execute it well enough. It's a high-risk, high-reward concept, but you know, I think in the end, I would take something risky and experimental but flawed over something safe and predictable. P5 was in many ways too safe and predictable, and still managed to be pretty flawed, so maybe globetrotting is exactly the shakeup the series needs. In any event, I'm eagerly awaiting whatever the Persona team has planned. With Hashino gone, I'm very curious about the direction they'll take things. Are they going to play it safe and emulate what he brought to the series? Or is a new paradigm shift on the horizon? We'll have to wait and see. Zeke Freak out. Ciao ciao for now.